Some people look at a limp or a scar and think they've already sized a man up. They see stiffness in his step, metal in his spine, and assume life has taken more from him than he has left to give. That's what the bikers believed when they yanked Jason Statham's collar inside the diner, laughing at the broken veteran they thought couldn't fight back. But the calm in Jason's eyes wasn't fear. It was recognition, a warning, and the moment he slowly rose to his feet, those men realized something was terribly, terribly off. Before we continue, thank you so much for watching and supporting these stories. If you enjoy grounded, cinematic narratives about courage, respect, and unexpected heroes rising at the right moment, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories like this to life. All right, let's continue. Most mornings in the small desert town of Fairbank began the same way. With sunlight spilling across cracked sidewalks, the distant hum of trucks on the highway, and the soft clatter of dishes inside Ruby's diner. It was the kind of place that still served coffee in heavy mugs and played old country songs so quietly you could almost pretend they weren't there. For Jason Statham, that quiet was the entire reason he came. He pushed the door open just after dawn, leaning slightly on the frame before taking his next step. The limp wasn't dramatic, not something you'd see in the movies. It was subtle, born from a spine that had been broken twice and rebuilt once. Each step carried a stiffness he couldn't hide, a reminder of what war had taken from him and what it had left behind. Ruby, the owner, looked up from behind the counter. "Morning, Jason, your booth's open." He nodded once, grateful. He always chose the same one. The corner booth by the window, the one with enough back support to let him sit without wincing. Jason moved slowly, methodically, each step measured. Not weak, not fragile, just a man learning to live in a body that didn't move the way it used to. He eased himself into the booth, exhaling quietly as the pressure left his spine. Ruby set a mug of coffee in front of him. "You sleep any better last night?" Jason gave a small, polite half-smile. "Define better." Ruby shook her head. "One day, you'll tell me more than 5 words at a time." "One day," he said, taking a sip. But he wouldn't, not really. Because talking about pain didn't fix it, and talking about the past only made it louder. Ruby left him to his silence, and Jason watched the world outside the diner window. People walked dogs, kids rode bikes, delivery trucks rattled past. Normal life, ordinary life. The kind he'd spent years fighting for, and now struggled to belong to. Jason stretched his back slowly, quietly. The metal brace pressed against his ribs, an unwelcome but necessary companion. It helped him walk, most days, but it didn't erase the tremor in his right leg when he stood too fast or the stabbing ache in his spine when he twisted the wrong way. Still, he was alive. He reminded himself of that every morning. He reached for his fork. And then the door shook. Not opened. Shook. Ruby's gaze snapped up. 3 men walked in, leather vests, heavy boots, patches stitched across their backs that didn't belong to any club that respected itself. Their laughter was too loud, their swagger too forced. They weren't bikers. They were boys with engines under them. Jason lowered his eyes to his plate. He wasn't here for trouble, and trouble didn't interest him anymore. But trouble didn't care. Because the bikers didn't go to the counter. They didn't sit at a table. They headed straight for the booth behind Jason, where an older man had just sat down. He was thin, too thin. His clothes were clean but worn. His hands trembled slightly as he unwrapped his silverware. When he lifted his coffee mug, Jason saw the tattoo. An eagle with spread wings. Army Air Corps. World War II era. A veteran far older than Jason. The man barely glanced up when the bikers surrounded him. "Morning, Grandpa," one of them said, tapping the man's shoulder. "Mind moving, we want this booth." The old veteran smiled politely. "Plenty of seats around." "Yeah," the biker sneered, "but we want this one." Jason's jaw tightened. He didn't turn around. Not yet. He wasn't here to fight, not anymore. The veteran cleared his throat. "Fellas, just let me finish my breakfast. Won't bother you none." Another biker leaned close enough for the man to smell his breath. You bothered us by existing. A quiet fell over the diner. Ruby froze behind the counter. Jason's fingers curled around his fork. The old veteran tried to stand, but his legs shook too much. His cane slipped from under him and clattered to the floor. The bikers laughed. "Look at that," one of them said. "Can't even stand without help." Jason closed his eyes. "Not yet. Not yet." He breathed once, slow and steady. But then the biker did the one thing Jason could never walk away from. He shoved the old man back into the booth. Hard. The veteran groaned as his back hit the hard edge of the seat. His coffee spilled across his lap. His breath hitched, the kind of hitch Jason recognized instantly. Pain. Spine pain. Jason had felt it too many times to mistake it. Ruby slammed her hand on the counter. "Hey, leave him alone." "Relax, lady," the biker said. "Just teaching the old fossil some manners." Jason pushed his plate aside. The diner felt smaller, the air heavier. His spine throbbed as he slowly, carefully shifted in his seat. He didn't want this. He didn't start this. But the moment the old veteran whispered, "Please, my back," Jason knew he was going to finish it. He placed his palms on the table, braced. Stood. It wasn't graceful. He rose slowly, the limp obvious, his brace clicking faintly under his shirt. The bikers saw him out of the corner of their eyes. One chuckled, "What's this, another cripple?" Jason ignored him. He walked steady, deliberate to the old veteran's booth. He retrieved the cane from the floor, cleaned off the dust, and handed it back gently. "You all right, sir?" The old man nodded, embarrassed. "Thank you." Jason turned. Now the bikers saw his full height. The calm in his expression. The quiet in his posture. And something shifted. "Sit down," the biggest biker said. "Ain't your business." Jason's voice was steady as stone. "It became my business when you put your hands on him." "You gonna stop us?" the biker sneered. "You can barely walk." Jason didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because another biker, the youngest, snorted and said the one sentence that changed everything. "Man S wearing a brace, probably held together with screws. A tap and he'll fall apart." Jason felt Ruby stiffen behind the counter. The old veteran lowered his head. The bikers laughed. But Jason, he didn't laugh. He didn't frown. He didn't show anything. Instead, he said quietly, "You boys have no idea what real broken looks like." The biggest biker stepped closer. "Yeah, you gonna show us?" Jason met his eyes. "No," he said, "life will." The biker shoved him. Jason took the hit without moving his feet. His spine screamed at him, but he absorbed it, grounding himself. That's when the second biker moved behind him. A mistake. A fatal one. Because Jason didn't rely on speed anymore. He relied on awareness. He pivoted with the limp, using it, letting the shift of weight go exactly where he needed it. The biker's hand reached for Jason's shoulder. Jason caught his wrist. Turned. Pulled. The biker hit the table edge with a thud. Ruby gasped. The old veteran whispered, "My God." The biggest biker lunged. Jason stepped aside, limping but precise, guiding the man into the booth wall with a shoulder check that made the entire diner vibrate. The biker wheezed. Jason didn't hit him. Didn't strike him. Didn't break him. He simply redirected him. The third biker hesitated. "You fight dirty," he spat. Jason shook his head. "I fight necessary." He took a step forward. Slow, uneven, but commanding. The biker flinched. "You think his brace makes him weak," Jason said, nodding toward the other veteran. "Makes me weak." The biker couldn't answer. Jason stepped closer. "A brace doesn't mean a man's broken," Jason said. "It means he stood back up." The diner went silent. The bikers looked at each other, really looked, and realized they had never stood up to anything in their lives. But then the smallest biker, the one who had mocked Jason's limp, reached into his back pocket. Jason saw the movement, the shift of fabric, the twitch of fingers. A blade. He sighed internally. Not again. Not today. The boy flicked the knife open and pointed it at Jason. You take one more step, he warned, and Jason stepped. Just one. The biker panicked and swung. Jason didn't block. He didn't grab. He didn't twist. He simply shifted his weight, letting the limp turn his body just enough to redirect the blade past him. His hand came down on the biker's wrist, not breaking it, just stopping it. Then Jason leaned in and whispered, "You don't walk out of this diner as a criminal. Put it down." The boy trembled, and slowly he dropped the knife. Jason nudged it away with his foot. Behind him, the biggest biker groaned and stood again, holding his ribs. "This ain't over," he growled. Jason looked over his shoulder. "It is," he said, "because you're done." And for the first time in their lives, the bikers believed a man without raising his voice, without boasting, without anger. Only certainty. The kind of certainty that came from a man who survived hell and refused to let cruelty live in front of him. They backed toward the door. No swagger now. No menace. Just shaken silence. But as the last one reached for the handle, he muttered, "We didn't know he was a vet." Jason's reply was quiet. "You shouldn't need to know." The door closed. Ruby exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for 10 minutes. The old veteran wiped his eyes. Jason's spine throbbed. His legs shook from standing too long, but he stayed upright. "Let's get you cleaned up," Jason said, offering the old man a steady arm. "Thank you," the veteran whispered. "Been a long time since someone stood up for me." Jason nodded once. "Me too." The diner didn't return to normal right away. Even after the bikers rode off, loud engines shaking the windows, fading into the distance like a storm leaving town, the quiet that followed wasn't peaceful. It felt tense, fragile, like the moment after a glass slips off a table and hasn't yet shattered. Ruby wiped the counter with trembling hands. The cook peered out of the kitchen, spatula frozen midair. Two truckers pretended to read their menus, their eyes flicking toward Jason every few seconds with disbelief. But Jason didn't notice any of them. He was focused on the old veteran. The man's hands shook as he dabbed coffee from his clothes with a napkin. "Fools," he muttered. "Whole world's gone upside down. Boys like that don't fear nothing anymore." Jason offered him a clean towel. "Maybe they fear the wrong things," he said. The veteran chuckled painfully softly. "And what should they fear?" Jason took a breath before answering. "Men who have lived long enough to know better." The veteran studied him then, really looked. His eyes narrowed as he took in Jason's posture, the careful way he shifted his weight, the brace bulging faintly beneath his shirt. "You served," the old man said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir," Jason replied. "Where?" Jason hesitated. He didn't talk about the specifics. Didn't like the way people's faces changed when they heard the names of countries no one wanted to remember. But he also knew this man earned the right not to be lied to. "Everywhere they told me to go," Jason said finally. The old man nodded. "I know that answer." He tapped his faded tattoo. "European Theater 44. Jason's eyes softened. "You've seen things then." The veteran laughed, but the sound cracked. "Seen enough for 10 lifetimes. And you?" "Enough," Jason said. They shared a quiet moment, the kind only two soldiers decades apart could understand. Ruby approached with a fresh cup of coffee for the older man and water for Jason. "You all right?" she asked. "I'm fine," Jason replied. She gave him a look that said she didn't believe him entirely. "You sure? You're walking stiff." "I always walk stiff." "That's not what I mean." Jason didn't answer. His spine burned from the earlier movements, redirecting weight, absorbing force, shifting through the limp in ways his physical therapist explicitly told him not to. Every nerve along his lower back pulsed like a frayed wire sparking in the dark. But pain wasn't new. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply his life. Ruby sighed and turned to the old man. "And you need anything else?" "Just dignity," he muttered, "but I'll settle for a dry shirt." Ruby smiled sadly. "We'll see what we can do." A bell jingled as the diner door opened. Jason's eyes flicked up, expecting more trouble. Instead, the sheriff walked in. Not with urgency, but with the exhausted shuffle of a man who'd already dealt with one too many problems before noon. Sheriff Dalton, mid-50s, barrel-chested, mustache thick enough to hide small secrets, surveyed the diner. Or rather, he surveyed the after of what happened. Chairs pushed wrong, menus on the floor, the old veteran spilled coffee, Jason's stance. "Morning," Dalton said. "Heard there was a situation." Ruby pointed toward Jason. "If he wasn't here, we'd be calling an ambulance instead of you." Dalton sighed. "I figured," he approached Jason. "You didn't have to get involved, you know. We could have handled those boys." Jason met the sheriff's eyes. "You weren't here." Dalton scratched his jaw. "Fair enough, you hurt anybody?" "No," Jason said. "Just stop them." Dalton looked around the diner, noticing the bent chair and the dent in the booth wall. "Stopped them pretty hard." Jason didn't reply. Dalton shifted his weight. "You all right? Need to get checked out?" Jason shook his head. The sheriff knew better than to push. "Those boys, they're trouble, but they ain't killers," Dalton said. "Still, I'll have a talk with M." The old veteran scoffed. "A talk, look what they did." Jason placed a calming hand on the man's forearm. "Let him handle it." Dalton tipped his hat. "Thank you for keeping things from getting worse." Jason didn't feel like he deserved gratitude for what he did. He didn't protect people for praise. He did it because someone needed help, and he had a hard time watching suffering. "Take care of your back," Dalton said as he left. "You moved like someone who forgot he was injured." Jason gave a faint smile. "It's easy to forget. Or easier to pretend." When the sheriff left, Ruby finally breathed again. "Breakfast is on the house," she told Jason. "Ruby." "No arguing. I'm not letting you pay after saving my diner." Jason knew better than to fight her on that. The old veteran cleared his throat. "Son, you didn't have to step in. You barely know me." Jason looked at him gently. "Didn't need to know you. Wrong is wrong." The old man swallowed hard. "Wish more people felt that way these days." Jason sat once more, slow and careful. The pain in his back pulsed, but he ignored it. He drank water, stared out the window. For a moment, it seemed like the worst had passed. But Fairbank was a small town. And small towns have long memories. The bell above the door jingled again. And this time, Jason knew trouble had returned before he looked. Two of the bikers from earlier walked in. Not the ones who attacked. Older members, bigger, calmer, but with that unmistakable dangerous stillness in their steps. Ruby froze. The old veteran tensed. Jason didn't move. The men scanned the room until their eyes landed on him. One nodded to the other. "There he is." Ruby's voice cracked. "We're not doing this again." The taller biker raised a hand. "Relax, ma'am. We ain't here to start something. We're here for the man who embarrassed the kids." Jason didn't respond. The older biker stepped closer, his boots heavy against the tiled floor. "You Jason Statham." Jason wiped his mouth with a napkin and set it down. "Used to be." The biker smirked. "Yeah, we heard stories, didn't think they were true." Jason didn't blink. "And now you do." "Yeah," the biker said. "Trouble is those kids you put in their place. Their family, our family." Ruby backed away. Jason didn't. "So what happens now?" he asked quietly. The biker shrugged. "Depends." "On what?" "On whether you're man enough to take responsibility for humiliating them." Jason stared at him for a long, still moment. Then he said, "You want to fight?" The biker shook his head. "Nah, I want respect. You made the club look weak." "I wasn't thinking about you," Jason said. "Maybe you should have," the biker replied. The old veteran whispered urgently, "Jason, don't." But Jason didn't stand. Didn't react. Didn't posture. He simply looked at the biker with calm, steady eyes. "You're angry because your boys were picking on someone weaker," Jason said. "That's not my responsibility." The biker's jaw tightened. "They're kids, they make mistakes." "So teach them better," Jason replied. The biker laughed bitterly. "Teach them. They don't listen to me half the time." Then maybe they'll listen, Jason said, when they understand who they chose to mess with. The biker leaned forward. And who are you, old man? Jason didn't answer with words. He shifted slightly in his seat, straightening his back, just enough for his shirt to tighten and reveal the shape of the brace underneath. The biker's eyes widened. Not in fear. In recognition. You, he whispered, you're the one that... Jason cut him off quietly. Sit down. Something in Jason's voice wasn't a request. The biker obeyed before realizing he had. His friend followed, uneasy. Ruby looked unsure whether to call for help or stay silent. The diner fell into a heavy, taut quiet. Jason leaned forward, elbows on the table. You came here thinking you needed to avenge your boys, he said, but you didn't ask what they did. You didn't ask why they were put on the ground. You didn't ask what made a grown man step in. The biker's throat bobbed. You want your club respected? Jason asked. Start acting like men worth respecting. The friend whispered, we didn't know the old guy was a vet. Jason's eyes sharpened. You shouldn't need to. An entire minute passed where none of the bikers spoke. Finally, the older one exhaled. We'll talk to the kids, they screwed up. Jason nodded once, good. The biker hesitated at the door. We won't forget this, he said. Jason sipped his water, I hope you don't. And they left. The diner stayed silent for a long time. Finally, Ruby whispered, Jason Statham, what are you? Jason smiled faintly. But it was the smile of someone who'd carried too much for too long. Just a man who's still learning to stand. The old veteran chuckled softly. Son, I think you're standing just fine. Jason didn't answer. His back ached. His legs shook. His spine felt like it was held together by stubbornness alone. But something warm settled in his chest. Not pride. Not victory. Just the quiet relief of knowing he still had something to offer the world. Even broken men could stand tall when it mattered. Jason finished his water, left cash on the table, and moved toward the door with his uneven gait. Ruby called after him, see you tomorrow. Jason paused. For breakfast, he asked. No, she said, smiling, for reminding this town what respect looks like. Jason considered that for a moment. Then he nodded once and stepped out into the sunlight. The limp still there, the brace still pressing against his ribs, the past still heavy on his shoulders. But lighter than it had been that morning. Because strength wasn't in how easy a man walked. It was in what made him rise at all.